Okay, so we're here with yet another episode of the Gritty Hour, and today I have a very special guest all the way from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, J.V. Hilliard, who's the author of The Last Keeper, book one of the Warminster series. And welcome to the Gritty Hour, sir.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you having me this evening.
Oh, it's our pleasure, and I'm glad you were wearing almost matching hats as we discussed. So we I could tell we have the same taste in stuff. So
This is my PR guy said I needed a gimmick, and he said, do you have something fun to wear? And I said, yeah. And this is, as weird as it sounds. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think I look at least half decent in it.
I wish I could say the same, but I wear it for pretty much the same reasons. Uh, so you're the author. This is your first fiction book, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's book one of a four-book series that will all be released here and within the next year. The Last Keeper came out in December of 2021, and book four will be released sometime around April or May of 2023. So the series will be finished up in pretty short order, and it's a blend of epic fantasy and dark fantasy. So if you're a fan of Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, or if you're a Dungeons and Dragons player, you'll like this from an epic fantasy perspective. The dark fantasy comes in because I spin into the novel a bit of the Gothic. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula and some of the 17th, 18th century stuff that I just love. So I try to make my novels a little different than what you would typically find in a Lord of the Rings movie.
Well, it's a popular genre, so um, you're available on Amazon. I know the audiobook is available on Amazon.
I am. So my books are available relatively ubiquitously. You can find them on Amazon. You can go to my publisher, which is Dragon Moon Press, and buy it there. You can go to any number of distributors, Apple Books, and as you mentioned, I do have an audiobook that accompanies that. So if you have a subscription to Audible or Robo or Kobo Rakuten, or yeah, again, Apple Books and things like that, you can download it there and be like me. I do a lot of traveling, so I listen to my books,
Yeah.
even though I prefer having a book in my hand while I read it. Sometimes you got to cheat. So
Right.
that's what I do.
And the audio, you can get it even if you don't have Audible, you could listen to the audio book via Amazon with an Audible trial.
That is correct. That is correct.
Use this book as a guinea pig to see if you like Audible.
Yeah, and my voice actor is a guy named Victor Bavine, and Victor is, if you like fantasy adventure, sword and sorcery, he's done a number of books in my genre.
Hmm.
So those who listen may find his voice relatively familiar.
Okay. So before we started recording, you had mentioned you're sort of a quasi ghostwriter of nonfiction in your day job. You wanted to just describe for our audience what you do?
Yeah, I might be one of the strangest authors. It's strange, I've been to a number of conventions and I've met other authors and things like that, and I have yet to meet another one that is a DC lobbyist. And so my day job, I do work with the Defense Department, and in particular a number of defense and technology companies. And so my work involves writing things in nonfiction. So when I started to bleed into writing fiction, and I used this opportunity that gave us some downtime through COVID to, kind of test the waters and see if I wanted to do this.
Right.
I had to learn things like pacing of novels for storytelling, or dialogue, because none of those things really happen in my nonfiction writing. So I write a lot of policy papers. I write copy for websites and material for regulatory stuff. I write grants. I've written contracts, and speeches, things like that you would find in a day-to-day lifestyle of someone who spends a lot of time in Washington. But instead, the Last Keeper is almost completely the opposite, where I've gone from something that's very real to something that's completely fantastical and creative, and my version of escapism.
Right, that's the word I was going to say. You did mention escapism, and it makes actually you say it's quirky, but it makes perfect sense that you would write a nonfiction as a means to escape if you're dealing in the minutia of government and defense contracts and stuff all day long. Makes sense to me anyway. So,
Yeah,
with your permission, I'm going to share your website as we continue to discuss because
yeah, of course.
I wanted to get into a little bit about the excuse me, the one second. Anybody who follows my podcast knows I don't know what the hell I'm doing technologically. So,
That's all right.
so this is the website, which is jvhilliard.com, jvhilliard.com. You'll find it in the show notes right below where you're listening to us from. So tell us a little bit about the book, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned earlier, it's the first book of four,
Hmm.
and it focuses on the central story of a young man who's coming into his own, who was born blind, but at 1 year of age, he was visited by a mysterious magic user of some kind who touched his eyes and gave him physical sight. And his noble parents um, couldn't find the person to thank them enough. But what with that blessing also came a curse. And as he got a little older, that physical sight also became a metaphysical sight. And he was sought by the keepers of the forbidden, which is a group of clerics and sorcerers and prophets that use their powers of prophecy and sight to predict things that have yet to come to pass. And he starts to have a set of recurring nightmares. And in there, he sees one of his own, a fallen keeper, returning to wreak havoc on their sect. And it's how he uses this sight, and it's sort of a story of a boy becoming a man. Also, sort of this sort of what I would describe as kind of like false prophet versus the chosen one kind of trope that you find in a lot of things. And so Daemus Alaric, who's the main character, has to learn how to harness his powers in time to stop the fallen keeper from returning.
Interesting. And is it, well, I guess being it's sort of a fantasy, so the time frame doesn't really matter, I guess, right? The era.
Yeah, no, this is, the realm of Warminster is like Middle Earth for Tolkien, or Westeros for Game of Thrones. It's its own realm. It has its own timeline, and this is the time after the ancients, which is my terminology for the gods and goddesses, have left the realm and have gone to the hall of the ancients, which is sort of the heavens, to use a term that we would all understand. And so the folks like Daemus that have this power of the sight are granted this power from an ancient of knowledge. And Erud grants the keepers this sight to use it to kind of teach and help the leaders of the realm of Warminster make the right decisions and show them the right path. But not always do you use this power for good. And so you find that there's a hidden story, something that'll play out in over the course of the four novels about Grey Taurus the Mad, who is sort of the villain, and the arch nemesis to Daemus. And it's his return from whatever kind of exile he was in, and how he finds himself sort of squaring off with Daemus in this kind of magical dreamscape that the two have together.
Hmm. Is Damus going to be a character, or all of the characters going to be continuing through the rest of the volumes as they come out?
No, not all of them.
I
So
guess
Daemus
you hope
is
too much.
one of the main characters, but not everybody lives. So, there are a few others that will play important roles in book one that might not make it to book two, and same thing for book two, and you go on to three and four, until it culminates into the last book, which will be known as Echoes of Ghostwood. And for those of you who have already read book one, you'll recognize that name as an important feature. And this whole realm all started in a place called Ghostwood, and in book 4 it's all going to end in a place called Ghostwood. So I think for those that have made their way through The Last Keeper, they'll recognize that and see that one of the other main characters, Sir Ritter of Vulcaneer, who's a goodly knight that's helping Daemus. This is a place that he's had to contend with to stop creatures that are coming from this cursed woods from raiding his land, and like in many epic fantasies, there's a very big epic battle in the end.
Hmm. As you were talking, I was just thinking this would be a perfect opportunity to jump on board, especially if you like this particular genre, before the other ones come out. You're not pressured as like this is a 4-part series. There's already 3 of them out. I got to catch up type of pressure. You can jump right into The Last Keeper book 1 and be ready for book 2 when it comes out, which you told me is scheduled for August.
It is late August of this year. It'll come out. It's going to be entitled Vorodin's Lair.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a continuation of Daemus's struggle against Great Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
And in many respects, it's part 2 in that. It's sort of kind of a bridge to what will ultimately be the culmination of the books. But this is the place where folks learn a lot of the backstories and the origin stories of not only the good guys, but also the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that there'll be just as much action in in Vorodin's Lair in book 2 as there is in book 1. But I would encourage people that before they get to book 2 to read book 1.
Right. I have to ask you who did the cover art. It's pretty cool.
I have a great illustrator. Her name is Larch Gallagher, and she's over in the UK, and did all 4 of my book covers. And she is wonderful. I get so many compliments on the cover. In fact, I even had backhanded compliments. I got an Amazon review one time where someone gave me a 2-star review, and they said I can only get 50 pages into the book, but I bought it because I saw the cover and I wanted to like this book so much. And I told Larch, I said, hey, that's a compliment, right? I mean, they bought it. They bought my book because of what you put on the front of it, and I think that's really what it's all about. Obviously, delivering a good story that entertains is really what it's all about. But
I did read some
Larch
of the,
is incredibly good at what she does.
I did read some of the other reviews. A lot of people do like the story. It's.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
We've been blessed with a lot of folks hitting both Goodreads and Amazon and some other places, and I've gotten mostly 4 and 5-star reviews, and I'm happy with that. I think that we've even gotten more than I had anticipated for a debut author with his first book on the marketplace. It's rare to see that, and I'm just blessed to have readers and followers that have reached out. I've even had I'm pretty open with people. I allow them to contact me through my website, through an email, and I've had people write to me asking me about the fate of characters to come, or I've had people draw characters that they in their minds have kind of have seen through reading it or listening to it. I even have some folks that have told me that they don't that they want to know the origin stories of some of the minor characters that are in it. There's a couple of comic relief guys that they want to know more about, as well as a story about one of the assassins, a bad guy in the not in the movie, but in the book, called In Canis Drew Waith.
Mhm.
And in Canis, I've had people compliment me saying that he's my Boba Fett.
Mhm.
So if you're a Star Wars fan, I think you'll get the reference and understand who it is, and you might end up cheering for the bad guy in the
Well, that's
novels.
great. It's great that you're interacting because it seems like it lends itself to that kind of thing where people want to throw their 2 cents in, like this is what I think this guy should be doing. But it seems to me, unless I'm wrong, do you have all 4 written and you just they're on scheduled release, or can they be manipulated? Is the other question I was going to ask you. Do you feel the temptation to manipulate something that hasn't come out yet?
Yeah, so the second one is already written, the third one is in editing, and the fourth one's about halfway done.
Mm-hmm.
So as anybody that has a product and is a business owner will understand, I mean, you have to listen to your customers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even though it might make a really good story the way I have it in my head. If the customers or the clients want to see it a different way, you have to listen to them sometimes.
Yeah,
And that's what I've done. Now, not all the time, but some of the time. And so, folks like Blue Connie and Canis Drew Waith may make their way into the books more than just marginally,
hmm
moving forward, because they seem to be some of my popular characters. Or folks, they tell you about what they think about the romance and that's in there, or the action that's in there, what they like to see. Because what I've done is I've tried to mix in a little what I would describe as a subtle science fiction into fantasy adventure. I'm a big sci-fi fan too, and I've created a city that appears in book 2, called Abacus, and it's a scholar city. And what I've always found is as a fantasy lover of the genre, is that if you look at Tolkien, I mean, those people, those societies are around for thousands of years, and they were still using swords and shields. Or Jon Snow in Game of Thrones is on the wall. He's the 999th, captain on the wall, and he's still using a sword and shield. It's like 5,000 years, and yeah, okay, they've got carts or whatever, but and so for me, I created this city that is my version of James Bond's Q, where they create items that I've kind of taken out of military history, things that fantasy fans won't find disruptive, but have been used throughout like medieval battles or Renaissance era battles. And I slip them in here so the good guys get an advantage every now and then.
Well, it's funny. Before we started recording, JV and I were discussing. We have a mutual love of military history.
We do.
And, you had mentioned, JV, that you try and incorporate, like you're describing now, with the Q, Bond Q, incorporating some of that military history into your storyline. Um, you
Yes,
got,
I have. And in fact, they do that in a couple of ways. I mean, the battle scenes in here, you can find clues to different battles that have actually happened, things that have that have been memorialized in our own history. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, as you mentioned, we both like military history, and it makes it more realistic. And when you're writing fantasy, and sometimes you're writing things that are so crazy fantasy, you have to ground it somewhere, so at least there's something that's believable or tangible people can identify with. If it's too esoteric, you could lose your audience. And so when they see things that are familiar to them, they not only, I think, like it more, but they also identify with it more. And I think that I've been able to do that in a variety of ways. In certain battle scenes, I have sort of like a Alamo scene in book 1, where there's a last stand at the Battle of Blood Ridge. I also do that in a couple of future battle scenes, including some research I've done on sort of like Scandinavian and more to the point, like Nordic, Norse sort of battles, and how they've handled things and how they chose their leadership. I know that's popular for many, and it's something that's in the novel. But I've looked at places that were Native American. I've looked at places that were battles that have taken place in Japan, and in particular some European battles, like the Thermopylae is another one that kind of appears in book 1 as well. And then tactics that are used. I talk a lot. I really enjoy writing battle scenes, and so the tactics of a swinging gate that was used at Gettysburg. The same kind of tactic is used here to fend off a number of bandits. Now it's used in a much smaller way, but these outnumbered knights are able to use this maneuver that was practiced at their military academy to save themselves and defeat an outnumbered amount of brigands that were attacking them 3-1, just being more trained. And I think those kind of things will ring true to readers, and whether or not they're like us and steeped in military history, or they're just looking for something that is realistically entertaining. I hope that those explanations give them a better understanding, and at least this creative imagination of what's happening in the book. And and I try to use that to my advantage when I can.
what about weaponry?
Yeah, so weaponry is a really cool one, right? So, for those, I'll give you two of them, right? So For my sci-fi fans that are out there too, that delve into fantasy every now and then, I've created this device called a Fisher's hook, which is shot from um, the bow of a pirate vessel and slams into sort of like a battering ram into the heart of other boats. And when it gets in there, it it connects like a fisher's hook. Like, and when they reel them in with the big pulleys, they can, it's sort of my version of a tractor beam. So like if you like Star Wars or Star Trek, and you've seen how they've used these tractor beams, these energy weapons, that was my way of having that happen too. But there's an armada battle that happens in book 3, where Greek fire is used. My version of Greek fire is used for an outnumbered army, or in this case navy, that's fighting a group that's has more naval prowess and battle, or battleships than they do. I also use quicklime, which was used by a lot of navies in the Renaissance era, and even before Renaissance, which come in these sort of like ceramic grenades, and when you throw them, they explode into this powder and burn the eyes of your enemy to give you an advantage. You're blinding them. And these are things that if you do just a tad bit of research, you find out were used throughout medieval times, Renaissance times, and can be used again.
Hmm.
And you'll in future books, especially the last, and I won't give too much away. I don't want to give too much of a spoiler alert here.
Right.
You'll see some Napoleonic stuff and some Civil War stuff make its way into there as well.
Cool. Cool. So the lovers of military who also like sci-fi or nonfiction in general, this is right up your alley. It's time to go out and get book 1 before book 2 becomes available. So you're looking for the end of August for Vorodin's. Again, kudos to your art director. It's tremendous book covers.
Yeah, she's, like I said, she's great. Yeah, we're looking for book 2 in August, end of August. It'll go on pre-order the beginning of August, and then book 3 will come out right around the holidays, and then book 4 will launch end of the winter, early spring of next year, and complete the series. So,
And
and folks can, like I said, I mean, they can reach out to me on my website. I'm pretty available on a number of social media channels, as well as I try to make my way through bookstores, conventions, libraries, things like that too. So I'm on the road a lot, doing the promotion stuff. And
mhm.
they can obviously find my stuff at dragonmoonpress.com, which is my publisher.
Okay, we'll include a link to that also in addition to jvhilliard.com. A couple of weeks ago, I had an author who writes true crime stories. He's a retired police officer who now is a full-time author, and he writes true crime stories. And the comment I made to him, which I think suffices for you, is it's very cinematic. The storylines are very cinematic. And I'll ask you what I asked him. Do you have like a movie in your head while you're writing?
Uh, no, no, but I've gotten people that say that my stuff it could be easily adapted into a movie, or sort of the small screen with like a Netflix series and things like that, just based on I think the fact that it is a series, and and my books run between 400 and 500 pages, so you can get a number of different things out of this. So I can easily see it being adapted to the silver screen or the small screen for those purposes. There are clearly enough characters in there to make it as interesting as Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones were, or Terry Brooks's stuff with the Shannara series. But I've also licensed the Realm of Warminster to a company called Melderverse, which is building a blended reality video game out of it.
Nice.
So, you'll be able to play the characters or make your own characters inside the realm of Warminster and go on similar quests that Daemus and his allies go on to defeat the bad guys. And in doing so, you can play it on your computer. You
Mhm.
can play it like augmented reality in the sense that they do today with some of the Harry Potter stuff or the Pokemon Go stuff that was very popular a few years ago, or virtual reality where you put on your headset and you can live in the realm of Warminster. And so that's what they call blended reality. It was a term I learned when he approached me about it. But Melderverse is the company that's making it. They may be the first that's adopting it, and I think, to your point about it being very cinematic, I think same thing here. You know, in order for you to make an attractive video game, you got to make one that, you know, kind of knocks your socks off. And I think with some of the rich descriptions I put in here, coupled with, you know, the battle scenes and some of the sort of quests, if you like, you know, the sci-fi fantasy stuff, I think this, you know, whether it's through the video game when it's out, or whether it's you know, someone adopting this into you know, a movie, or, you know, a TV show, I think that this would be, you know, well positioned to be considered for those kind of things.
Yeah. Is this the realm we're looking at now? The map of the realm?
It is. It is. Now that's you're seeing that on my my website, and you know, you can. I'm in the process of, you know, for books 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to focus in on specific areas. So these maps will change. I will have a couple of new map releases
Mm-hmm.
to my website and to my social accounts as we get closer, as well as, you've seen some of the book covers we've already released that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have a book trailer that's being completed by a friend of mine named Dave Prokopek. He's with Light Raider Films, and he's award-winning cinematographer, and I somehow talked him into making a book trailer for books 2, 3, and 4. So they'll be out soon, and his stuff is crazy cinematic. And I think anybody that watches that is going to say, "Oh, I want to see that movie." And then at the end, it's going to pop up, and it's going to be like, "Damn it, it's a book."
Yeah,
So
well,
he's a good man, and I'm looking forward to being able to share that here in the next month.
it might influence a buyer from the Netflixes out there. But
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? Someone will watch that and say, "Hmm, this does look like there's a good
yeah,
trailer for a
yeah,
movie."
that's what I
And they
mean.
get tricked into having to buy my book to read it.
There's nothing wrong with that, my friend. What
No, that's what it's there for, right? Everybody's doing it these days. You got to play along.
if your hat wasn't a dead giveaway? This map is. I already know your ancestry without having to say it. I'd be
Uh-oh.
shocked if you weren't at least a part Irish.
I am a part Irish. Can you imagine that?
Mm. It's a massive shock. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm
that's
sure that
cool.
it really caught you off guard.
I, I,
You know,
I'm glad.
it's not necessarily the lily white skin. I'm so white, I'm pink.
Well,
Places,
you
but
know,
I don't think I have to tell you much about that, right?
no, I as well, born from the county Bronx, but I am Irish.
Yeah.
Um, the the map actually, I was looking at this map while you were describing the potential for a video game, and I just thought it was a phenomenal idea. It's very exciting. The video game portion of it, and
Yeah, no, the video game stuff, you know, I was surprised
I was
at
just thinking
the
of what section of this map I was gonna click on to start my village, and have it build into a realm.
You got it. You
Yeah.
got it. That's exactly what this is going to be. You will be able to create your own character within the realm.
Hmm.
You'll be able to choose what part of the realm you come from, and you'll be able to own your own virtual property within the realm. So you can develop. You can start out as a kind of a peasant hero that develops into a knight that becomes a baron or a duke one day. You know, and as your character levels up within the game, there's also rewards in the real world from retail sponsors. So as you just slay the dragon, and you get the treasure chest, you open it up, and inside that treasure chest is not just treasure and magic for your character within the game, but there's also coupons and free stuff from retailers that want to be part of sponsoring the game. So a lot of that, and I think that's something that's pretty unique. I haven't seen that yet in any games. I've seen sponsorships, but I haven't seen where you can actually use that as a, you know, a client relation token, for lack of a better word, to you know, to be able to kind of redeem that in the real world somewhere. So I think that's a pretty cool little hook to it.
I agree. It sounds like a phenomenal idea. Whoever the game designer is, that's a great approach.
Yeah, and his name is Jay Rizio. He's the CEO of the company, and Jay's been a serial entrepreneur for a number of years, big tech guy. I've had a chance to work with him in politics, as strange as it was. One of his first companies was a tech company that helped with grassroots initiatives. And you know, in my side of the realm, I sat on the other side of the table using guys like Jay to attract you know, folks to come to events or support certain things in DC. And so we got to know one another. And then he read the book over the holidays, and called me and is like, "Hey man, I'm in the process of making this game. Can I license the realm from you?" And I didn't even know what that entailed. So we sat down with an IP attorney, we hammered it out, and we're hoping to have an alpha with some early collaborators that will help us make a better game sometime here in Q4. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me and I'll connect you into Jay, or you can visit melderverse.com,
Hmm.
uh, and you can sign up for it there and take a look at it. And you can be an early collaborator and help us design gameplay.
What is your email address so anyone listening can shoot you if they have an idea?
Sure. It is about as simple as it gets. It's joe@jvhilliard.com. So that's Joe, Joe, at jvhilliard.com.
If you want to get on the cusp of what I think is a great idea, this might be your chance. And to those who are interacting, if you do buy the first book before two, which is passed right by it. Passed by it before I could. You have to pronounce it for me. The title of the book
Yeah,
two.
it's called Vorodin's Lair.
Okay.
So it's named after a man named Vorodin the Ageless, who is an elven wizard that has purported to live for 5,000 years, and he is holding the keys to the secret to help Daemus in book two. So he has to uh Daemus has to find him in his lair, which is the name of the book. Vorodin's Lair. So it wasn't super creative, but it's a name that it's hard to forget once you read it.
Sure. And then Trillia's Gambit. Can you give us like?
Yeah. So this is book three, and that is sort of a quest that Daemus and his companions have to go on to recover a lost relic that they're going to need to defeat Great Taurus the Mad in book four, which is not on here just yet. We're still in development of that.
Hmm. And that's Trillia's Gambit. Did I read that
Yep,
correctly? Yeah.
you did. And Trillius is the name of an ancient. He's the one god who stayed terrestrial when all the rest went off to the Hall of the Ancients, which is kind of like my Valhalla. They all left the earth and they're now in the heavens, far, far away. And they watch over the realm. But Trillius, who is the god of sports and tests, stayed behind. And the concept behind that novel is that Daemus has to do something that's so difficult and hard that he needs to seek the advice from a god, basically. And Trillius will only help him if he passes one of his tests. So they take a big risk, a gambit, and they go to his island where he stays, and he presents them with a test. And if they pass it, he helps them out. If they don't,
Hmm.
so we'll see where that goes, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things you mentioned earlier was you've been able to interact with a lot of your fans already about what they want to see and what they want to see what happens to certain characters. I think they still have an outside shot of manipulating book four. You're not done
They
yet.
they they do. I've had some folks, try to guess at the end, and
Hmm.
and that's all fine and good, but it's first of all, I'm never going to spoil it because that's not my job,
No.
right? If someone wants to read it and spoil it for someone else, they can do it. But for me, what I've found is that I think people, even though they complain about cliffhangers, or they complain about tropes, or they always come back. Like, I even it's like I've had people tell me things about my book, and I'm like, oh well, I'm sorry you didn't like it. They're like, no, when's the second one come
Mm.
out? And so you're like, all right, I get it now. Like, it's just they want to level here's my opinion about what frustrated me, but they like that frustration. It's entertainment. And I really think that that's at the heart of this stuff. I get asked that question all the time, is what's the purpose of the books? And a lot of people's purposes are a lot more sophisticated than mine. Mine is just to entertain. I look at this and say, it's my spare time, it's my pastime. And if I am going to read, some people go and play golf, other people do a variety of hobbies, but for those of us that are readers, they want to read good stuff, and I want to make sure that even though they might not be happy with everything that happens in the books, that they're happy with the story and that they like it, and they tell someone else to go and buy the next one.
Yeah. Well, they're all on board, and I think part of the frustration they might be feeling is the unresolved nature of it, because there's still three more volumes to come, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I've got people to tell me that to reach out to them once all four are done, and then they'll binge the series,
Right.
and that's just that's great, but I can only write one book at a time. So,
Okay. Yeah.
and I on my side of the table, I'm trying to build an audience, right? And so you do things like this. You come on your podcast, you talk to people, you try to to promote it in a variety of different ways. Like I'm available for signings. I go to conventions. I've been on TV, radio, podcasts, YouTube, you name it, to try to promote those things so that by book four, I've got enough of an audience that it makes sense to continue and write the next three or four
Right.
after that too. So you got to start somewhere. And so book one is where it is.
I have a feeling there's going to be the snowball effect will come into play.
Well,
And
I hope so. I hope you're right. Knocking on wood over here.
then there'll be people that jump on in the third, and then they got to do that catch up. The advantage of getting in now is you can read The Last Keeper and then just wait a couple weeks for the next one, and then you'll be on board and you'll know where everybody stands character wise, and you can await the third and fourth volumes.
Yeah, and I don't know if your other author guests have talked about this, but there's been a sea change in the marketplace for books over the last 10 years. And part of it is this a practice they call it was rapid release, which is they expect books, that people that are reading don't want to wait a year for another book to come out. They want to see these things in short order. And in my realm, when I write epic fantasy, it's hard to write four or five, like 130,000 words and 450 pages. You can't write a book a month, and some people are writing books that are 80, 100 page, 120 pages long. There's these kind of novellas. They can kind of get away with that. But for me, it's really impossible. So when I say I'm releasing something in 4 months, that is a ton of work that goes, and a lot of folks they don't understand the process of going through a development edit or a copy edit or sharing it with beta readers so that you can see plot holes, or people come up with good ideas before you go to hit the publish button, and things like that. And you want to contemplate them and make changes. And that just takes time. And people, read at different speeds, and, they're often unavailable to do that. So you want to put out a good product, but you want to get it to market. And I think part of that is like the changing, attention span of millennials and Gen Zs and what will be Gen Alphas when they start to read this thing in a few years. They like to binge everything. They want to have everything at their fingertips, like on their cell phone, and they're used to having answers immediately. And in this case, you see it a lot with people that go to Netflix. Like people will Netflix something over a holiday weekend, or
Yeah.
they'll binge watch something on Netflix over a holiday weekend, or same thing with them. They'll go to those things and do that. And that's become a practice for readership as well. So I'm trying to keep pace while I'm also have a day job. So there's some sleepless nights every now and then.
Oh yeah, that's it's kudos to you authors out there, because I can't imagine the amount of work that goes into it. I knew about the binge watch. I've done it myself, but Netflix and things like that, or Amazon Prime or whatever. But I wasn't aware there was a similar trend in book reading as well.
It is. And I fell victim of this past weekend with the holiday, Stranger Things, right? It was the, series 4 conclusion, and it was 3.5 hours long and 2 big episodes. And, of course I'm going to watch it. Right. And I binge watched, the other series, the first part of the series over Memorial Day. And so like, you plan for those kind of things now, and you don't want to be behind. And there are those like HBO that release them once a week, to keep you tuning back in. And then you get the Netflixes where it's like they're all available right now. Go ahead and add it. And I think it's a different kind of reader that wants to read right away. But look, it is a changing landscape, and we've got to change with it.
Well, you should be just glad that people are still reading books. Uh,
Yeah, it's funny, like I have friends that I expected to read this, and they still haven't read it because they're not readers. Like, oh, call me when the movie's out. And you're like, oh no. Yeah, it's like it doesn't work that way. Like I need your support now, the kind of thing, so that people will pay attention, so that there is a movie or a video game or whatever,
right.
and But you're right. I mean, I think that it's a different, like me. I mean, I see more people nowadays using ebooks and e-readers.
Mm.
And they just do it on their phone or on their iPads or their laptops or whatever. And I'm guilty of that when I travel. I mentioned audiobooks before. I mean, I can kill that sitting in traffic. You know what I mean? You can kill a
Well,
book
that's the thing.
audio in a week, right? Doing that stuff. And that way it's something that it's productive and you feel like you've at least had a chance to read it, even though it's more listening than reading, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing of just in the podcast world. I think this, whatever the stat was, like 70% of the people that listen to podcasts listen to it while they're driving. And I'm assuming audiobooks are the same way. And it was a smart move on your part to make it available as an audiobook. Are all four going to be available as an audiobook?
They will.
Yeah.
They will. So, and it'll be the same voice in Victor, and that way there's a level of, continuity with that. And he does such a good job. I wouldn't want to migrate away from him anyway.
And that the question I was going to ask, given the changing landscape in the publishing world, as you were just describing, did that prompt you maybe to backload the first three before you came out with the first one? Because it seemed like when the first one came out, the second one and the third one might have been in the can or close to being ready before the
Well,
first one came out, right?
that's an interesting story, actually. It's a very good question. I'm one of those COVID authors that found the time to do this when my business was shut down for nearly a year. And so I know I tease her, but my wife was sitting there like wagging a finger saying, "You're not going to just sit around for do nothing, go do something." And so this has been rattling around in my head for a long time. And I put it together in one giant manuscript because I didn't know what I was doing. Right. And I shared it with an associate professor friend of mine, and she read it and she told me that it had potential and that it was, but that most fantasy novels are not standalone books. They're typically series because when you take as much time as you need to really build this world and all this world building that you're doing, fans don't want to be left off and learn the next world in the next book. They want that world to exist for them so that there can be the next and the next and the next.
Right.
Same thing my publisher said. I mean, and if you can't tell by the name Dragon Moon Press, uh, they're a very genre specific publishing house. They She said the same. She's like, look, I'd love to do this, but I want a series. I think everybody wants a series here. And so it originally was going to be three, but it kind of has grown and bled into four.
Hmm.
And I think that's a nice stop for it right there. And we'll see what happens. Because many of these characters will survive the trials and tribulations. Many of them will not, but I think there's enough that do that. Fans will be invested in
Hmm.
it, and readers might want more of it. Or I can sort of sidestep and start doing origin stories, where of some of the characters and kind of approaching it in the same way that graphic novels or comic books have been successful over the last 20 years doing that same kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that was going to be what I was going to ask you. Are you looking beyond book four, or are you still just so immersed in the storyline of book four that you haven't really considered it?
Yeah, the truth is the answer is yes and no, right? As someone that is creating these things, you're always thinking of the next thing. Like I already have kind of an idea of what could happen if there were more after four.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think readers would find the same thing. They're going to find some of their heroes left unsatisfied.
Hmm.
Some of the villains have been left unconquered. Some of the problems that they solve create new problems, and those things can be written about. But I think a lot of it just depends on the success of the series. Is this something that I want to continue, or do I want to move on to the next, right? And as of right now, it looks like for a debut novel of this type, it's gotten you know it's gotten a lot of publicity. I think it's gotten enough groundswell of support that I'm encouraged by that. But to guarantee it right now, I mean, let's see what everybody thinks when we finish up the fourth, and when the series ends, and I'll get some feedback at that point, and maybe make a determination on whether or not we move forward into the next 3 or 4.
Right. Well, sometimes, there's a lot of good authors, as you are, will let the character and the situations they get themselves in, determine how long the story goes on for, right?
Right. Yeah. And there's some things here too. I mean, it's not a movie ending, right? This is not a typical all the good guys win and all the problems are solved and we ride happily ever after into the sunset. This ends in a way that real life would end.
Mhm.
Not everybody comes back. Not every problem is solved. So there's going to be opportunities to do that. But my sense is it'll be satisfying enough that if I left it where it was, people would accept it, and I would hope they would say, you know what, that was a pretty good story.
Mhm.
I didn't get everything I wanted, but it was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But if there
Like
was
The
enough
Sopranos.
groundswell, yeah, then maybe I would consider it.
Kind of like The Sopranos. Everybody's pissed off how it ended. You know.
It's hard to. I get where you're going,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, in that same vein, like
Mhm.
you know, uh, the Star Wars movies, for example. I mean, that's a great one where it ends because there's a trilogy and it's supposed to end, but no one's ever going to let it end because people want more, right? And they want origin stories from characters, or they want the next chapter. And sometimes you just have to take a breath, and come up for air and say, all right, I'm going to give it a little bit of time, and then I'm going to come back at it and figure that stuff out. For me, it's too nascent of a series. Let's see how well it is received. If it continues to get the exposure and some of the praise that it's gotten already, then I think the answer's likely going to be like, hell yeah, let's run with it. But there also is the reality that it might just not do as well as I hope it does. And so, I'll make those decisions when we get there, but clo- ask me that question this time next year, April of next year. I'll tell you where we're going with it. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? I know we're in July, but that last book comes out April, May, and at that point, I think I'll have a better idea of whether or not this thing survives it and goes on, or I got it out of my bloodstream and we're good. Put it in the rear view mirror. We'll see.
I'll put my money on the former, but I understand where you're coming from. That makes perfect sense. But I appreciate your time tonight, Mr. Hilliard. It was great learning about this, and to our listeners, especially those who like this particular genre, this is your opportunity to get in while the story is new and fresh, and then you can follow the series as it comes out. And as Mr. Hilliard said, you can try and manipulate book 4. You still got an outside shot.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to be on the show. This has been I mean, this hour flew by.
It really
I'd
did.
love to come back and do it again down the road when, we're in the book 3 or 4. And if any of your listeners or your viewers or your followers want to find me, I'd appreciate them visiting the website and sending me an email.
Right. As I said before, the website and the publisher's website will be available just in the show notes, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on your podcast platform. So thank you again, sir, and I will have you back for future, and especially for the when the video game comes out, because I like
All
video.
right, I'll do that. And maybe I'll bring the CEO with me too. You could
There
chat
you
him.
go. That'll be cool.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Have a great evening, and maybe I'll see you on the Gettysburg battlefield. I'm going out there soon.
Hey, if you're gonna be there, let me know. I'm out there every other year. It's just too good not to go and visit. So,
I agree, definitely.
all right, sir.
Thank you. Have a great
Thanks,
evening.
Tom.
Okay.
Yep. See you now.